All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you could all take your seats. It's my pleasure to call to order the 110th meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission on February 24th, 9:30 at the Boston Convention and Exhibition Center. I want to make a few introductory remarks before we get started here, and I think some of the other commissioners may also have some thoughts. This is one of the penultimate weeks of the process that we've been involved in. We set out at the beginning, almost from the very first month, to commit ourselves to a process of licensing expanded gaming facilities in Massachusetts in a manner that would be perceived by the participants and by the public as having been participatory, transparent, and fair. To that end, as I said, we've had 110 public meetings. That comes to something like 600 hours of public meetings streamed live on the web and available to the public. That's 15 weeks of public meetings. We've had public hearings, we've had public meetings and presentations to groups and parts of the public communities across the state. We've had 7 educational forums. We've had dozens, probably by now hundreds of media appearances. We've had what surely is by now thousands of letters and emails from concerned citizens, all of which have been parsed and read by all of us. And the culmination of all this process is the RFA2 applications, as you all know, for the Category 2 slots parlor license. Those applications, I believe, comprise some 15,000 pages of information. The applications were broken down into 5 different categories of evaluation: finance, mitigation, site and building design, economic development, and a general overview section. Each of the 5 commissioners took on one of those 5 evaluation categories. Each of the commissioners put together teams of consultants and advisors to work with them over, how many months has it now been that since they came in? October 4th. So what's that, five months of detailed and comprehensive review of the 15,000 pages, as well as 2 public hearings for each of these applications after the applications came in. And now it is finally time for a decision. There will be winners and losers in this process, which we've all known from the beginning. Not just the gaming companies, but also communities, some pro, some con. Some will win because there is a license awarded nearby. Some will win because there's not a license awarded nearby. But overall, we've had the experience, and I'm pretty sure I can speak for the other commissioners, but they'll speak for themselves, of meeting with and working with quality people across the Commonwealth. The applicants and their multitudinous lawyers, the host and surrounding communities and their public officials, and a vast number of interested citizens, each and every one doing their job as they saw fit in advance of making the best of this important law. Commissioner Stebbins makes a point often when he speaks about how uniquely we treat this industry. If any other industry came to Massachusetts, and in the case of the slots parlor said, we want to invest a minimum of $125 million, and we want to create whatever it is, 1,000 jobs, and we want to create associated economic development. In the case of the casinos, a minimum of 500 million, 3,000 or 4,000 jobs. We would be on our hands and knees passing out tax breaks and applauding. This industry we put through an incredibly rigorous process of poking and prodding and background checking and skepticism, referenda, all appropriately so, given the nature of the business, but it does remind us, how differently we treat this industry than we treat any other industry that we deal with. It's the right way to do it because of the nature of the industry, but I think it's important to appreciate just how different that is, as Commissioner Stebbins points out so often. From the standpoint of the bidders and the communities that want a license, in a way I wish we could award 3 licenses. because of the nature of the applications that we've got and the people and the communities involved. That's not the law, and by the way, that would not be good public policy, but from a certain standpoint, I would that we could do that. We'll talk about the process more in a few minutes, but from the commission's standpoint, as we go through this evaluation process between now and hopefully the end of the day on Friday, we will try to reach a unanimous consensus, if we can, on which applicant we will select. But we may not, and a split vote in no way alters the dispositiveness, nor the importance, nor the clarity of the decision. If we have different opinions, then a majority vote will determine the outcome. So let us begin. We've said from the beginning that we are committed to a participatory, transparent, and fair process. And I, for one, hope very much that by the end of this week, that the participants in the bidding process, the communities involved, and the people of Massachusetts will believe that we have met that standard. Any other commissioners want to say anything as we begin?
I did. Thank you. I just wanted to mention, for the record, obviously, and for the public, all of our applicants have spent a significant amount of time and resources getting to this point. As a reminder, there was a very extensive RFA 1 process of suitability. These investigations take a long time. Even filling out the application takes a long time, and it's very detailed, and we've gone through a lot of time and discussion there. The way the legislation here was set up was one in which it required a lot of negotiation with the host community and surrounding community up front, at risk, without any guarantees that they would be selected. In other jurisdictions, for example in Canada, I'm told by my consultants that those kinds of things often get put at a later time, after the decision is made on award. And that has different implications. There's stumbling blocks sometimes, but what the net effect of that is that our applicants, in effect, have spent a lot of time and resources getting to this point. So on that front, I think it's important to note that we have a better process because of the commitment that they've shown, because of the diligence that they've demonstrated to get to this point. And for that, we, or at least I am grateful for all of the work that they've done to get to this point, and that includes not just them, but a lot of their agents and a lot of communities that support them, as you were mentioning, Mr. Chairman. So I wanted to just emphasize the point that the Commonwealth benefits because of your applications and diligence. So thank you.
Commissioner?
I want to echo those comments and add just a few words of thanks. I won't dwell on the process. It's obviously, to everybody's knowledge, been very extensive. I just came up with just a short, simple list of some quick thank yous. First of all, thank you also again to our applicants for the work that they've done. They've been very forthcoming with information. They've been generous hosts when we've been out to visit their facilities and site visits, very forthcoming with information when we've asked for it. The communities, both the residents who have been in favor and opposed, who took time to come out to the host community and surrounding community hearings, share information with us. It was a few weeks ago, I was following up on some information that had been shared with us by a resident. So we do and did take all of their comments in letters and emails certainly into consideration. Thank our counterparts in other states. We've had tremendous support. I know our IEB team has from our counterparts doing this in other jurisdictions. They also assisted us with our recent site visits, and they've been a great source of information as well. I also want to thank our MGC staff. The 5 of us have been pretty consumed with this evaluation process over the 5 months. last 5 months, they have continued to plow ahead with drafting regulations, continuing the daily operation of the commission as we've settled into this review role of these applications. So for our team, I think we need to extend our thanks for kind of keeping the trains going in the right direction as we move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to just briefly underscore something. I echo the comments made by all three of my colleagues, but I wanted to underscore something that the chairman said in his opening remarks, and that is the extraordinary quality of the people who we have encountered during the course of this process. There have been some who are against gaming. There's some who are against us. There are some who are passionately for gaming and for the work we're doing and for the gaming in their own towns. There are select people and town managers and others who are integral to the smooth functioning of the communities where these facilities are going to be placed and the communities that surround them. All of them have been engaged in an effort to think through the problems, to articulate the problems, to think through the benefits and to articulate the benefits. And as one person said to me at the end of our last meeting in Leominster, a person who was opposed to the proposal for Leominster, did not think that it was a good idea. This process has been a process in democracy, whatever the outcome. And I think that's the way the legislature intended it to work. From the energy that I've seen put into this, the dedication put into this by all people on all sides, including the applicants, including those opposed, I think that process is working, and I'm proud to have been a part of it and continue to be a part of it as we proceed through this week and into the next.
I didn't plan on saying anything. I think everything's been said eloquently, as always, by my fellow commissioners, but I would like to thank them. A lot of work, a lot of effort, and a pleasure to do it with folks that have humor, really care, have all the right interests at heart, and you know, can be used as a tremendous resource. And I've learned a lot from each of you, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
All right. General Counsel Catherine Blue will tell to us a little bit about the process and the law.
Good morning, Commissioners. You have before you 3 copies of a document that's entitled the Checklist for the Issuance of the Category 2 Gaming License. The Legal Department has put this together for you to use as sort of a checklist to determine the findings that need to be made for each applicant. You can either use it one for all 3 or one individually. You will note that it has findings by section, and the goal is by the time we're through with this process, we will have checked all the boxes for each section, meaning we've made all the required findings. I'd like to call your attention to the first page, which talks about some of the general requirements. Some of these we talked about yesterday, but just to refresh everyone's memory and for the audience. The Commission may not issue more than 1 Category 2 license, but it must only be issued to a licensee who is qualified under the criteria set forth in our statute. If the Commission is not convinced that an applicant has met the eligibility criteria and provided convincing evidence, no Category 2 license shall be awarded. The Commission has full discretion as to whether to issue a license. Applicants have no legal right or privilege to a license. We talked yesterday about the period of the license being for 5 years, and we discussed when that period began. We've also talked about this in the past, but I think this is very important. The Commission's proceedings here which began with the submission of the RFA2 applications, they're administrative and legislative in nature. They're not adjudicatory. Each applicant has been required to present all the information required by the Commission. The RFA2 administrative proceedings have involved public hearings. They have not been adversarial in nature. They have involved no specific charges, legal rights, or privileges. They've provided no opportunity for cross-examination of witnesses under oath. They've afforded the opportunity for public comments, including unsworn statements and letters of support, opposition, or concern by persons advocating for or against the application. And this proceeding will involve a final decision to grant or deny a gaming license, and that rests within all times at the discretion of the Commission. The Commission shall ultimately grant or deny each application before it. In determining whether an applicant receives a gaming license, the commission will evaluate and issue a statement of findings of how each applicant proposes to advance the objectives in our Enabling Act. And we discussed yesterday the form of what that decision will look like and what that will entail. So those are the overall rules or overall portions of our enabling statute that apply to the process. The next several pages have the more specific findings for each section. So if there are any questions or comments on the legal portion?
Do you happen to have, or could we readily get the 18 legislative criteria? I think they were on a piece of paper that I didn't bring.
We can get that for you. It was in the front of the gaming license that we did. We can get a copy of that for
I
you
didn't bring
today.
it with me, but
Okay.
I'd like to have that.
We can get that for you.
Thank you. Anybody else, commissioners, questions? All right, thank you. And the last step before we proceed is a final update on the suitability checks, the background investigations. We've made very clear that at any given point in time, when we're doing the background investigations of the applicants and all their qualifiers, that is a judgment made at a snapshot in time. Whether or not a applicant or a license holder, for that matter, eventually, or any of its qualifiers is suitable, is constantly open for review and revision and reconsideration, as well as there may be changes in the qualifiers or the key parties in the organization. So before we move to the next step, we've asked Director Karen Wells of our Investigations and Enforcement Bureau to make sure that her organization has done a last-minute update of the suitability and background checks of our 3 applicants. Director Wells.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
As a preliminary matter, I'd like to echo what Commissioner Stebbins said about thanking the other jurisdictions that have helped us along the way. They've been extremely cooperative and forthright with information and advice, and it was extremely beneficial to us over the course of the last year. As for the 3 applicants that you have before you here today, I'll start with the Cordish companies. They do have no new qualifiers as of today. We did an updated check on the existing qualifiers, and that revealed no additional issues for the Commission. We did check with Maryland regulators. They indicated no compliance or other issues with Cordish Company and Maryland Live since the last contact with Massachusetts authorities. In addition, Pennsylvania Gaming Commission formally approved Cordish's suitability at their commission's hearing just about a month ago on January 30th, 2014. And for the chairman's edification, we have confirmed the compliance committee now takes written minutes after Chairman Crosby asked about that at our suitability hearing earlier last year. As for the Rainham application, there are no new qualifiers for that group. We did an updated check on their existing qualifiers, and that revealed no additional issues for the Commission. Also checked with the Pennsylvania regulators, revealed no compliance concerns with Parks. I do note that Parks is currently installing a new state-of-the-art surveillance system, something the Massachusetts IEB would certainly be interested in seeing. They are proceeding along with their project. As for Springfield Gaming and Redevelopment and their parent company, Penn National, to update you on where we were with respect to the REIT, the Real Estate Investment Trust, on November 1st, 2013, Penn completed the spinoff of most of its real estate assets into a separate publicly traded real estate investment trust. In connection with this spinoff, so there have been some changes to the senior management at Penn National. Bill Clifford and Steve Snyder, who were qualifiers for the Massachusetts investigation, went to the REIT. Peter Carlino resigned as the CEO of Penn to become the CEO of the REIT, GLPI. He remains chairman of the board of Penn National, however. Tim Wilmot was promoted to CEO. He was president and COO at the time of our investigation. Jay Snowden was promoted to COO. Saul Reibstein, he was resigned as a board member and has become the CFO of Penn National. We have 2 new qualifiers, BJ Fair and Carl Sottosanti. Mr. Fair was hired as the Chief Development Officer, and Carl Sottosanti was promoted to General Counsel. As is the normal course with these investigations, as new employees come aboard, we will do suitability investigations on those individual qualifiers who are at the executive level and present those findings to the Commission as we go along. As with the other applicants, we've updated check on the present qualifiers and revealed no significant information that should be reported to the Commission. They do have 18 licenses in 18 jurisdictions in which they operate. They're currently in all good standing. PED did notify us of some regulatory infractions since their suitability hearing. They did involve routine enforcement proceedings relative to gaming operations, and the applicant responded appropriately. Similar to the findings after their suitability determination, the issues were consistent with the running of an operation of their size, and they do not appear to have integrity implications. I do make one note, because this was a public matter. On November 22nd, 2013, an employee of Hollywood Casino at Penn National Racecourse in Pennsylvania, Dan Robertson, was indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office along with 3 Pennsylvania Racing Commission licensed trainers who were not employees of the property for attempting to fix horse races at PNRC. Robertson, who was employed as a clocker responsible for timing horses during training runs, ultimately had his Racing Commission license revoked, and he has been terminated by PNRC. He was charged with taking bribes for reporting inaccurate times during workouts. Those charges remain pending. While there was never any allegation of any wrongdoing by PNRC itself, following the indictments, Penn's legal and racing departments conducted a review of the existing internal controls related to the clocker position and took steps to minimize the chance of the recurrence of a similar issue. Also of note, in January, Penn took over as the manager of Plainville Racecourse in Plainville, Massachusetts, the site of their proposed Park Casino. Penn Corporate Counsel and representatives of Hollywood Casino Bangor's Human Resources Department conducted 2 days of training on responsible gaming, responsible alcohol service, and Title 26 anti-money laundering compliance for the track's employees. Additionally, with corporate guidance, the property has also now set up a voluntary self-exclusion program for problem gaming. With all 3 applicants, no new information has been identified at this time, which would necessitate a change in their suitability finding. If any of the commissioners have any questions, I'm available for any questions on these.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wells, and we are good to go. Our first evaluation criteria is site and building design, which we thought would be good to kind of get us all oriented towards what we're talking about. And Commissioner Jim McHugh has led that evaluation team and will be making the presentation of their findings this morning.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, members
Good
of the
morning.
audience. I'm delighted to be able to finally, after a great deal of work, as we've described by everybody, to be able to begin the process of deliberating about the license award with a brief exploration of the building and site design component of the application. The next slide, please. As the chairman mentioned, and just to set the stage and reiterate, the application that each of the applicants was required to file consisted of information about 5 separate topics: the overview topic, or sometimes called the WOW topic, the finance topic, the economic development topic, the building and site design topic, and the mitigation topic, which had a broad range, like the others, of features to it. The building and site design category focuses chiefly on physical aspects of the proposed slots parlor and its relationship to physical and other aspects of its surroundings. As I was thinking about how to deal with the components of this component of the application, I thought, first of all, that I could read the 6,000 pages that comprise the section of mine, but thought that might take somewhat longer than we had.
You took a vote and lost 4-1.
Yeah. A self-vote was the 5th. So what I've done, and what I propose to do over the next few minutes that I'm standing in front of you, is go through that portion of the application at a fairly high level. It's a level designed to acquaint you, or reacquaint you, as the case may be, and the audience, and with the essential features of the proposals. Underlying this rather high-level view is a detailed report that's been distributed to all of you, and it's available to the public. And beneath the report is other data that led to its creation. So this morning, what I want to do is give an overview of the topic, an overview of the analysis, talk about the ratings that were given to each of the 3 applicants and the general reasons for those ratings, but this in no way detracts from the underlying data on which the presentation is based. So with that, let's turn to the next slide and begin the discussion. The building and site design component of the application contains 79 questions that focus on 7 separate criteria. 9 of those questions focus on creativity and design of the facility, 15 on whether the gaming establishment is of high quality with quality amenities, 13 look at the compatibility of the gaming establishment with its surroundings, 22, a great number, look at use of sustainable development principles. And this is clear from the legislation, we being the renewable center of the United States, that the legislature was concerned about this criterion, and that is reflected in the amount of detail we wanted to know from each about how they proposed to proceed. Security had 9 questions associated with it, approach to permitting, another 9, and then there were 2 at the end. Next, please. To help me with the analysis, I drew on the knowledge, experience, and as shown over the last 4 months, dedication and energy of a number of consultants, the 6 of whom are listed here. These are engineers, architects, individuals who have had experience in large and small and diverse projects, including some casino experience. They, with the exception of Anne-Marie Lubenow, are here today. I don't think Anne-Marie is here. So they all are here today. Pompeo Casal is to my right. Next to him is Frank Tremontazzi. Anne-Marie Lubenow is here. Ray Porfilio is there. Rick Moore is next to Ray, and Stan Elkerton is next to Rick. And they were of great assistance to me as our analysis proceeded, and I thank them for their thoughts, their energy, and their insights. Let's turn to the next slide, which shows that based on my review of the application, based on the insight and input from the consultants at a variety of meetings, I prepared a report containing a rating for each criterion and for groups of questions connected with that criterion. I'll detail that a little bit more in a minute. But for each group of questions, I prepared a rating. And then there was an overall rating for each criterion and ultimately an overall rating for each proposal. The ratings fell into one of 4 categories: insufficient, sufficient, very good, or outstanding. And you'll see those colors repeat themselves as this presentation proceeds. Insufficient meant that the response failed to present a clear plan to address whatever topic was under discussion, or failed to meet the minimum acceptable criteria of the Commission. Sufficient meant that the response that the applicant provided was comprehensible and met the minimum acceptable criteria, or provided the required or requested information. Very good meant that the response was comprehensive, that it demonstrated credible experience and plans, and/or excelled in some areas. And outstanding meant that the response was of uniformly high quality and demonstrated convincing experience, creative thinking, innovative plans, and a substantially unique approach. We all used those criteria. This sets forth the uniform criteria that I applied when making my report. To the report, attached to the report, you will find 4 appendices dealing with schematic design, energy and sustainable design, traffic and parking, permitting, and then some statutory excerpts. And those appendices are there because the bulleted components of the report we thought needed some expansion in some areas in order to do them full justice. Next slide, please. Finally, in preparing the report, or before we prepared the report, all of us in the company of Ray Porfilio, there were 6 of us, visited operating facilities that each of the applicants maintains. For the Leominster site, we visited the Cordish, Maryland Live facility in Baltimore, Maryland. For the Plainville site, the Plain Ridge track, the Penn National site, we visited the Penn National Racetrack in Grantville, Pennsylvania, in the rolling Pennsylvania hills, a beautiful setting, beautiful site, and looked at the operations there. And for the Raynham facility, we visited the Parks facility in Bensalem, which is a suburb of Pennsylvania, suburb of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and looked at the operations being conducted in that facility. We were interested not so much in comparable operations, because all of those are casinos, but we were interested in the manner of operation, we were interested in the quality of the amenities, we were interested in the layout, the approach, and those site visits proved to be invaluable in all of those regards. So with all of that as background, let's begin the discussion with a brief overview at the next slide of the locations where each of these facilities, for which each of these facilities is proposed. Now, that's not a map I would suggest you use driving home, but it is one that graphically outlines where these facilities are in relation to each other. The Leominster facility is located up here, as one would expect, in Leominster. The Plainville facility is in, Plainridge facility is in Plainville. The Raynham facility down here to the right. In relation to other facilities, this is Springfield, where the MGM applicant is proposing to build a casino, and the two Suffolk County applicants are proposing to build facilities right here. Here is the Twin River Casino in Rhode Island. Here is the Newport Slots Parlor in Newport, Rhode Island. The Mashpee Wampanoags are proposing to build a facility here. That's under federal review, and we have no control or responsibility for that. And the Aquina Wampanoags have been talking about, and I know very little about it, but they've been talking about a facility here on Martha's Vineyard. And finally, with respect to regional activities, there are the Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods casinos in that area of Connecticut. Turn now with me, if you will, to the first of the criteria in the building and site design catalog. Creativity in design and overall concept excellence is the title of this criterion. As I said at the beginning, I grouped all of the questions, and there are 9 total here, and I did this in each case. I grouped the 9 questions into separate categories based on my judgment, and these are all judgment calls, my judgment about their importance to the overall rating for that criterion. So here, I viewed as most important the overall theme, the color rendering, and the schematic design. At a secondary level, the relationship with surroundings and proposed landscaping. I propose to, in the next few minutes, talk about these categories primarily. But these are the categories that give one a feel and a flavor for what the project is going to look like. What is the motivating force? What are they thinking about? How are they proposing to lay it out once shovels get in the ground? So the next slide will begin first with the Cordish proposal for Leominster. Let me say that I'm doing this in alphabetical order by town or city: Leominster, Plainville, Raynham. And I do that because in the popular parlance and discussion, people are focusing on these facilities by the town. And so that's a recognizable way to do it. Alphabetical order is a common way of proceeding, so that's how this this plan evolved. And I'll refer to these facilities not by their sponsor's name in the future, but by the town: the Leominster proposal, the Plainville proposal, and the Raynham proposal. So this is a rendering, and a rendering, one has to understand, is a drawing. This is not a plan. It's a drawing of the entrance to the proposed facility in Leominster. This captures the Live brand, which the Cordish companies use. That's the Maryland Live part of Live. I think they've got that copyrighted. I think Mr. Cordish told me that's copyrighted. Anyway, it's there, and that's the familiar brand that they use. The location is shown on the next slide, which is at the intersection of Route 117 and I-90. I-90 is a major north-south artery. 117 is a heavily used, I think it's fair to say, but not nearly as major, an east-west facility. Leominster itself is up here. Route 12 and Route 117 continue on up into Leominster. This is where the proposed facility would go, right here, nestled in the corner of the intersection of Route 117 and I-90. We'll get a closer look in the next slide of the facility and its immediate surroundings. This is that intersection that we were just looking at, Here is a truck stop and large gas station. This is the entrance to the facility, which is off of Jungle Road. This is Jungle Road that runs north-south here. Right here is a large Walmart store with the associated parking. This is the location of the facility. Right now, there are buildings on the facility, one of which the Leominster applicant proposes to use. This is a plastics factory that's in operation now. They propose to redo that facility and turn it into the gaming establishment. Next door is another much smaller building that currently is in use as well. They propose to take that one down, and as you'll see in a second, use part of that for parking. The operators and owners of this, if this proposal goes forward, have plans to move to another location so that active business will continue. These owners and operators do as well. I'm going to take us now to the next slide, which will rotate. I'm sorry, we're not ready for the rotation. This is a further homing in on the site itself, and this is an important slide for a couple of reasons. Outlined in yellow here is the area where the applicant proposes to build the facility. Here's that operating factory I mentioned in a minute. Here's the other building that they propose to take down, and they propose to use this site as the site for the gaming establishment. I suggest that we make that a condition if we award the license to this applicant in meets and bounds, because there has been some concern in the community about precisely where the facility is going to go. The Cordish interests have control over the facilities that appear here in pink and have various permitting that's already occurred with respect to those. But the gaming establishment is not proposed for those places. But I'd also make it a condition of the license, if this is the successful applicant, that any construction on those facilities take place only after notice to us, so that we can look at the impact of any activity on these facilities on the gaming establishment itself. And now we're going to rotate to the next slide, and we've rotated 90 degrees. Jungle Road is now running horizontal instead of vertical, but this is the area that was just outlined, recognizable by that, I don't know what you call that shape, but it's recognizable. And this is the essential plan for the facility. We're going to use this diagram again at a couple of other points in the presentation, but this is the outline of their plan. I want to note a couple of noteworthy things here, although I'm not going to go into extensive detail at this point. First of all, this is the gaming facility. That's quite self-evident. This is the reformatted, refitted existing building that we just looked at a second ago. Noteworthy here is a solar array on the roof of that building. Here's the entrance right here. The main entrance is down Jungle Road and in here. Route 117, you'll recall, is up in this direction. The Walmart's over here. This is for general parking, these purple spaces. This is valet parking. This is handicap parking, and this is an area set aside for electric vehicles. That's a flexible area. As electric vehicles catch on, that can be expanded, but that's the way the plan is now. This is also a component of the landscaping plan. We get from this a vision for what the landscaping and breakup of the parking area will look like. That's supported by a much more detailed landscaping plan that was put together and was made part of the application. The next slide will show us another rendering. Again, you have to understand that this is not this is not a plan. And in addition, this is a rendering taken from an earlier approach to this project. It's in the application. It's the rendering that of a quality that the applicant is committed to, but it is not necessarily a rendering of the specific site that we're going to that they're going to build on.
But it is,
nope,
excuse me, Commissioner, it is the same building, though? That is the reused building?
this is not, I believe, the reused building.
Oh, so this is something,
Right.
all right.
Right. But that being said, there is an important feature of this that I'd like to point out, because they have committed to this, and you'll see in the floor plan that we look at in a minute that commitment is there, and that is this. This is a restaurant with access from the outside, so that one can enter and leave this restaurant without ever entering the gaming floor. If we look at the other side, on the next slide, also a rendering of the same building. This is a side entrance, and again, another restaurant on the other side that has access and egress from the outside. So these are facilities that are designed, and it is part of their business plan, to have facilities that will attract people independent of their interest in gaming inside the facility. That's what I wanted to show you about the Leominster application at the moment. Let's turn to the Plain Ridge application, Plainville
Excuse me,
application in the next
Commissioner.
slide.
Would you prefer that we interrupt you with questions now, or how would you like to?
I prefer never to be interrupted, but
I know, I'm trying to adjust. Would you clarify for me this business about the building and the different sites? I know we've talked about this, but I can't keep this straight. You know,
okay,
there-
let's go back, if we
Yeah.
could, 3 slides, please, to the, I'll tell you when to stop. Next, one more, please, I'm sorry, 4 slides. Initially, the proposal that we received, in their primary proposal, let me back up even a step further. When the Leominster, when Cordish presented its application to us, they had a primary proposal and an alternate proposal. They were the only ones that did that. And the initial proposal,
This was in the RFA too?
this was in the RFA too. And that's an important point, so thank you for the interruption. We have amassed a great deal of information throughout the proceedings. We have, in compiling this report, tried very hard to stick to information in the RFA2 application. So if there was something in one of the presentations that we saw that isn't in the application, we have not considered it as a basis for building the report. We wanted it in the application. We've also relied on material in the DE and the MEPA that's been generated in the MEPA process. We've also relied on information of a general sense that we got on the site visits, and that is that is the basis, the core of the information on which we relied. So yes, in the initial application, RFA2 application, there were 2 proposals. There was a primary proposal and an alternate proposal. The primary proposal in that initial one was farther to the south here. It was essentially the same dimensions, essentially the same square footage, essentially the same outlines. The building orientation, it was a new building. The building orientation was different, but it was farther south here. Part of the issue with that southern proposal was that the parking lot crossed a marsh. There was a marsh running through the middle of it. So they would have had to move and deal with the marsh land in order to build this, in order to complete building the parking lot. And in addition to that, it was more difficult to get to that remote part of the parking lot than it is to the integrated parking lot. So after the MEPA process began, they changed the proposal to come north to what we call the north site, and it is now the site outlined in yellow, and that's the site on which they propose to build this facility. That's why, though, I recommend that if they are the licensees, that we make that a condition, because there has been some discussion in the town,
Some
and
misunderstanding,
some
right.
concern about the town, about a sort of a floating site.
And the 16 versus 26, I assume the yellow is the 16 acres and the purple is the additional 10 or so that would make it 26, and you're recommending that we tie them to the 16?
Well, I can't, yeah, this is, I can answer for part of that. This is the 16. I don't know how many acres comprise these,
Okay.
because they still control this area down here too. So there may be more than 10 there, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But they're not part of the gaming establishment.
Okay.
These 16 acres are part of the gaming establishment.
All right, thank you.
Are the gaming.
That's great, that's helpful, thank you.
Right. All right, now let's turn to the Plainville proposal, which is there. This is, again, a rendering. There are a lot of renderings, and I keep repeating that because I want everybody, us included, to understand that these are not plans. These are concepts. So this is the proposed Plain Ridge facility at Plainville. There are three main components, and we're going to talk about those as I proceed. On the far left-hand side is what they call the clubhouse. That has certain features that I'll discuss with you as we go along. Here's the main entrance, here is the casino proper, and here is the parking garage. There is, as you will see in a minute, more parking around, but this is the entrance to that facility. Next slide, please, for the location. The location of this facility is at the intersection of Route 495 and Route 1 in Plainville. It is located right here, again, nestled in a corner of that intersection. Gillette Stadium is up the road this way about a mile. About a mile in this direction are the Rentham outlets, which I think are the largest outlet mall in New England. A little bit farther west is the TPC Boston golf course, a championship PGA course. Mr. Cameron no doubt knows about that. And farther west is the Comcast Entertainment venue. So those venues are all along this corridor to the west, and Gillette Stadium is right up here. We'll take a closer look at that in the next slide. Here is 495, here's Route 1. A couple of features that I want to point out here are these. This is the Target store, so there's a shopping center right there, and this is another store. I don't know the name of that, but it's another large retail outfit. This is a Lowe's store, Lowe's hardware store. This, of course, is Route 1, north and south. This is the so-called jug handle, and I'm going to talk about that again in a minute after I get to another section of the application. But I just want to point that out now so that you remember that this is a feature of importance. And then for exploration of what's there at the track right now, we'll turn to the next slide, and we can see more clearly what's at the facility right now. The heart of the operations of the facility is this right here. This is the clubhouse. It's a simulcast facility. It's the facility for viewing racing. This, of course, is the track. This is the paddock where the horses are prepared for the actual races. These are the barns where the horses stay while they're at the track. Many of them are brought in shortly before the races and trucked out afterwards, but those that stay are right there. And this is the parking garage. Work has started on the parking garage. There's a sense of optimism there. That was started some time ago and is in good progress at the moment. Those are the features that I wanted to show on this diagram. So let's look at now the landscape plan for the facility. Again, a rendering. There are a number of features that I think are important to point out here. This is the parking garage. This is the casino. We looked at this in the other drawing, that first rendering, from this direction. We were looking right on here. This is the clubhouse that I mentioned. We'll get inside the clubhouse a little later. And this is the casino. Two other features are really important to this application, and that's these. This is a natural pond. It's there now. It'll be preserved for fire protection, a place to draw water in the event of a fire or other emergency that needs that quality of water. But this is to be created, a membrane-lined sediment collection pool. Underground pipes and drains in this area, the parking area, will take all of the surface water, the rainwater, and drain it into this pond, where it will sit, allow the sediment to settle out, and then the sediment will be taken out periodically and disposed of. Similarly, from around this side of the building, there will be a series of underground pipes that will lead into the area about right here, taking all the rainwater and drainage from this side, putting it into that pipe. This will be a reservoir holding all of that water after the sediment is settled out, and available for either reintegration into the soil through natural drainage, or as a source of all of the non-potable water needs, irrigation, watering, and the like, for the entire facility. No potable water, according to the applicant, will be used to maintain any of this landscaping. There is a full and good landscaping component of the application. The site drawings have grades and piping diagrams and the like, so that is a thoroughly thought-out proposal. Now I'm going to show you some elevations. These are a little bit hard sometimes to understand, but they do show the profile and outline of the facility as viewed from various angles. This is looking straight at the entrance to the building. So this is, we're standing here, and this is the northwest entrance. We're looking southeast at the entrance to the building. A piece of the parking garage is visible over here. A piece of the clubhouse is visible over here. In this view, the entrance remains here, but we've tilted it just a little bit. This is the clubhouse looking out at the track, which is over here. The viewing areas are here, and we'll get to that in more detail later. And of course, the large garage predominates on the right-hand side. A couple of other profiles in the next slide. This is one where we stand with our back at the track. With our back at the track, we see the viewing area over here. We see the garage over here. Then if we move around to the side, we see the garage a lot, and we see some of the track over here in this large sort of blank area in the middle. So that's what I wanted to show you about that facility. At the time, we'll return, as we will, to all of these facilities in a few minutes and take a look at other features that they contain. This now brings us to Raynham and the Parks facility. This is a rendering showing the way the second phase of the proposal will look when it's completed. This is the side that faces Route 138. If you drove up and down 138, this is what you'd see as you pass the facility. I think it's important to note, and I'll note that in a second in more detail, that this is a project that contains a number of phases, 2 guaranteed, and we've placed weight on those, 2 contingencies, and frankly, we have not placed much weight on them because there's no commitment to do them. Let's take a look at where this facility is located. There it is at the intersection of Route 138 and Route 495, just north of that intersection. This is the facility right here. 138 continues on up in this direction. That's of some consequences we'll see in a minute. Taunton is down Route 138 about 5 miles to the south. This is Route 24, another major north-south artery just to the east of the facility. So the facility has access from 495. It has access from Route 24 via 495. It has access from the north via Route 138. What's there now is shown on the next slide and consists of a former racetrack that's not in operation at the moment. These are the existing buildings that are in use, and it's important to take a close look at these, or as close as you can get from this slide. This is the main simulcast area that's being used in the facility right now. There is some activity of a variety of kinds in here, including entertainment, a reception area, and the like, but this is the main place where the simulcast activity is going on. This is a gas station here. These things here are a variety of different objects, buildings, and devices that are associated with a variety of the enterprises owned and operated by Frank Carney, who owns, by Mr. Carney, who owns the entire facility here. So let's look at the next slide. As I said, the applicant, the Raynham applicant, proposes to begin operations in 2 phases, an initial temporary phase and then a secondary permanent phase, believing that that is the fastest way to get actual operations underway. It proposes a 3rd phase, which would include a hotel, and a 4th phase, which would include a South Coast rail station, but it is not committed to either of those phases, and so, as I said, we did not place any significant weight on those. The existing building is this building, and that's the building that the applicant proposes to redo and to use as the slots parlor. The slots parlor would have all 1,250 slot machines in it. It would be up and running, and as a slots parlor with the full complement of slot machines. The gas station would remain, the parking area would remain about the way it is now. If there's more area around here that could be used for parking, they would use this area where parking is now available. Most of the parking right now goes on in here, and it probably would continue to go on, but could be filled here, and hopefully would be filled there if this were undertaken. These are existing buildings. They apparently would remain while this temporary building was in use. Next slide, please. These are renderings showing you what this facility would look like. Again, renderings, idealized visions of it. This is the view you would see from the street, from Route 138 as you came in. That's the end of that long building that we were looking at, and with the entrance off to the left side here. This now turns this around in the.
This is the permanent building.
No, this is
Oh,
still the temporary building, Mr. Chairman. We now turn this around in that direction, look at it sideways, lengthwise. We're now looking at that, and we're looking directly at the entrance. This is that end that faces Route 138, and this is the building reclad and re-landscaped to give us that view. And this is where these slots operations would be taking place in Phase 1. Phase 2 is on the next slide. In Phase 2, that temporary building that we were just looking at would come down, the permanent building would go up, the parking would be substantially redesigned, and come around to embrace that side of the building. So we would have all of this as parking area for that facility. About 2,500 parking spaces. The numbers differ. I'll come back to that in a later discussion. The gas station would, it appears, remain, although this may mean that it was going to be taken down. I'm sorry, in this phase, that gas station does come down. It remains for Phase 1. So this is the plan for the permanent facility. And there is no landscaping plan to go with this. There is no landscaping diagram. So this is basically what we have to work with in understanding the layout of the facility. We do have, however, in the next slide, the renderings that show us three views of the facility. As I mentioned when we looked at this the first time, that is the view you get from the permanent facility from Route 138. If you turn this facility to the left, so that the entrance is on the left, this is the side view. And if you turn this facility to the right, so that the entrance is on the right, this is the view that you get. That's what the facility looks like when constructed. That's a brand-new facility. It's being constructed while the other facility is being operated, and it will take that shape, essentially, recognizing that this is a rendering when it's completed. So now the next slide, please. So after looking at all three of those, I made a narrative judgment that evaluated each of the three. Leominster presents a well-documented overall design concept and a package that is consistent with proposed uses and with an upscale entertainment, gaming, dining, and live entertainment. We'll deal more with the live entertainment in a minute. Live entertainment venue. Its site and landscape proposal reinforces the design. Plainville provides adequate information to describe the design approach and integrates gaming with live racing and simulcast in a site-specific solution. Its site and landscape proposal address stormwater and runoff. Rainham incorporates gaming, simulcast, and a multi-purpose space into an internally focused facility set out in a large parking area. The exterior is dominated by electronic signage, and its site and landscapes proposals lack the detail necessary for full evaluation. And that reminds me that I omitted something that I should have pointed out to you 2 slides ago. So John, if you go back there, please, because I want to make it clear, and I apologize for missing this the first time around. This is the permanent facility, as I said. This front part is the gaming facility. In the back here is a 15,000 square foot special events facility. It's there, we'll see it on the floor plan, I'll discuss it in more detail when we get there. The specific uses for it are not described in the application. A specific plan for uses is not described. It's available for receptions, for functions, for wedding receptions, for a whole variety of uses. But it's not clear, was not clear to me from the application what the marketing effort toward that would be, and that's why the comment in the overall design. Now, next slide. No, I'm sorry, that should be, I want the slide right. Try the next one, John, see what happens. Go back one. Okay. Well, it's in the books, the books have been distributed, I don't know why that happened. But the next slide, and we'll see samples of it as we proceed. The next slide showed the ratings that we gave to each of the groupings that I gave to each of the groupings of questions as I move forward. And then the final slide before we got to criterion 2, which is this slide, I gave an overall rating for each of the applicants on criterion 1. And I assigned to Leominster a rating of sufficient to very good. I assigned to Plainville a rating of sufficient, and I assigned to Raynham a rating of insufficient to sufficient. And that rating, the insufficiency part of that rating, really came from the fact that the design package was of insufficient detail to really probe into what the design and some of the other aspects were going to consist of. There was
Commissioner,
no,
excuse me, this is a really important slide, as you're saying, and it's unfortunate that it's not there to be seen. Would you mind just saying again what you just said? Just restate the conclusions that you've drawn on this slide for the ratings of the 3 facilities?
well, let's go back to the rating narrative, the one a minute ago.
Before we do that, is it possible to get to use a second screen to see if that's available in another document?
No, we only have this,
You only have that one document?
it's only on one,
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
No,
it's all right. It's no-
Unfortunately, we,
It's no problem. We
we had
just,
a- all right, so let's just focus on this. Leominster presents a well-documented overall design concept and packaging that is consistent with the proposed uses and with an upscale entertainment, gaming, dining, and live entertainment venue. Its site and landscape proposal reinforces the design. So for that reason, I assigned to the Leominster proposal a rating of okay. I assigned to Leominster a rating of very good to sufficient. So that was this slide. You'll see this pattern repeated as we go forward. That is a narrative of the ratings and the evaluation. This slide, I'm not going to go through piece by piece, because this slide simply provides the backup detail that supports the overall rating for the criterion. The overall rating for the criterion perhaps is in the next slide. What about on this side, John? There it is, there it is, there it is. And this slide shows the overall rating for the criterion. This is that same narrative I just read to you a minute ago. This is the grouping of questions, and this is the rating. For the Leominster applicant, sufficient to very good. For Plainville, sufficient. And for Raynham, insufficient to sufficient. And the insufficiency, I was saying, is based on the fact that the design package was of insufficient detail, there was no landscaping plan, and the site consisted of a very large parking lot with no breaks and no landscaping detail to show us what the parking lot was going to look like other than a large, flat parking lot. So for that reason, I assigned those three those ratings. You'll see this same pattern repeat itself as I move forward. First, a narrative of the overall evaluation, because I don't want folks to be distracted by the colors. Then just a sense that there is a backup for that, and then the colors that define the final rating. So I'd be happy to pause here now and take any questions if there are any, or move on to the next criterion if there aren't.
I have no questions.
I wouldn't risk interrupting.
Okay.
I may have. Your comment about the detail, the level of detail on the second phase, on the Rain
Right.
applicant.
Right.
Is that also the case for the first phase?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
You basically, the plans that you saw here are basically the plans that we have.
Right.
Anybody else? Okay.
All right, the second criterion focuses on a gaming establishment of high caliber with quality amenities in partnership with local facilities. And again, I grouped these questions together, leading with the most important. There are 15 questions total. These 5 were most relevant to building and site design. These were relevant and important, but of lesser importance, and it's these in particular that I'm going to deal with as we proceed with this. This is some of the surrounding communities, tourism diversity and the like, I know will be taken up by the business, by the Economic Development Group, and so I'm concentrating here on this group. Next slide, please. So this is back to that slide that we looked at the beginning. I'm not going to pause here very long because I simply want to orient everybody to this casino facility. We're now going to lift the lid off of that and look at what's underneath it in the next slide. This is the floor plan now for that casino facility. The entrance is right here. You come into the entrance and go directly ahead of you is a large central bar. This is one of the restaurants that has access to the outdoors. This is access right here. This, of course, is the gaming floor right here. This is a food court. It does not have any outlets to the exterior, but is available to patrons to go in and out to get some refreshment, as are these. This restaurant is available, can be entered from the inside as well. This is the performance venue. It's about a 450-seat auditorium with a stage at the front that's capable of being reconfigured in a number of ways, but is primarily designed for concerts and the like. It is designed to be one of the 3 independent attractions for this facility: the restaurants, the entertainment, and the gaming being the 3. On this side, we have another restaurant that's accessible from the outside through here. This is the back of the house and support for the auditorium. There's this green room back here and other facilities here. And as I said, this is the gaming floor. There is a second floor for administrative offices along the back here, but I'm not going to show that now. In the next slide, we get an idea of the quality to which the applicant is committed. And these are photographs taken in the Maryland Live facility and included as part of the application. We took pictures in each of the facilities that we visited during the site visits, but we committed to using, in this presentation, only the photographs that were in the application because they depict quality to which the applicant is committed, and they are the applicant's choice, so those are the ones that we took. There was nothing that we took in photographs that detracted from the quality shown in these photographs. This is the large bar that's at the center of the gaming floor in that facility. This is a buffet, a quick food, sort of a upscale quick food place, but it's a quick food buffet. This is a more upscale buffet, including a salad bar and an array of foods in the back. And this is the fine dining, high-scale, upscale fine dining facility that exists in that location. So that's what I wanted to show about the Leominster facility. Here, again, is the Plain Ridge facility, and again, I want to simply say, focus, this is the clubhouse, this is the casino, this is the parking garage, and I just want to lift the roof off of that in the next slide. That's the slide, thank you. No, back one, thank you, back two. There we go, okay. This is the main entrance to the facility right here. This is the clubhouse, so-called, back here. In the clubhouse, we have two separate facilities. This is a racing area where one can view the racing out on the track. This is the sports bar, the Doug Flutie Sports Bar that we've heard about in a number of presentations. This component of the facility is accessible from the outside. You come through here into what's called the north vestibule, and then you can go right into the sports bar. You can go right out again, or you can go back on the other end and go into the gaming area. This is a restaurant here that's accessible only from the interior. This is a food court that's again accessible only from the interior. This is, of course, the gaming floor, the gaming location. This is a bar that serves the gaming floor. And this is the first floor of the garage. People who park in the garage come down to the first floor and then enter the facility through that entrance. On the next slide, we'll take a look at the second level of the clubhouse. Go back to this version. This is the clubhouse. Now, this sits on top, as you can see from here, this sits on top of the area where the sports bar, the Flutie bar is, and the north entrance is. And this portion of the facility has two functions. This is the simulcast area in here, and this is a multi-function room that looks out on the track. The track is over here and has a deck that people can go out on to watch races or other events at the track, and there is a proposal to have other events at the track. So that's what goes on, the essential purpose of this facility. Then on top of that sits this piece, which is in here reserved for gaming, for racing operations, printing programs and doing all the administrative stuff for racing. And then the judge's booth for the actual racing is here and sticks out from the building so that the judges have good sight lines down the track and across. I want to show one more view of this on the next slide, which is this view right here, because this is the top of the garage and this is the roof of the gaming facility, and this is a solar array. We saw a solar array in the Leominster facility as well. This is the solar array for the Plainville facility, and it is supported by a richly detailed set of operational concepts. Who suppliers would be, what the voltage of the material would be, how much the output would be. There really is a great deal of backup for this one, so I thought it was worth taking a look at it in particular. That's what I'd like you to see about the Plainville facility. We now go to the Raynham facility. Again, this is the building that we're looking at. We're going to uncap it, if you will, in the next slide. So this is the first floor diagram. This is the special events room and facility in the back that I mentioned to you before, a 15,000 square foot area. This is the facility, and this is the area that's adjacent to the facility. The facility itself is here. There's a bar here that separates that portion of the facility from the gaming floor. This is the gaming floor here. There is a central bar, as there was in the facility we just looked at, as there is in the first facility, the Leominster facility, a central bar there. There's a restaurant here, not accessible from the outside. This is the restaurant, this is the kitchen. There is over here a food court, and then there's a kitchen here that I assume would service both this food court and events that were taking place in the facility, although probably that kitchen could do it as well. The entrance, of course, is down here, and one comes in through the entrance directly onto the gaming floor where the slot machines are arrayed. The second floor, there is a second floor, that contains about 8,000 square feet for a simulcast room. On the next slide, we look at, and this slide unfortunately has been tilted to one side. Can we bring that up on the other one, John, do you think? There we are. This slide contains photographs that the applicant included with its application that emanate from the Parks facility in Bensalem, except perhaps this one. I don't recall seeing this one, but perhaps this is there as well. In any event, these three slides are photographs of a sports bar that is located in the Bensalem facility. This is the bar that's on the floor that would be assumed of the quality in the central location, and this is a photograph of the high-end dining area that is in that facility. So those are representatives of the kinds and qualities of things that one might expect in this facility. The next slide, please. So that goes into the detail I wanted to invite your attention to with respect to the floor plans, the interior of the buildings. Leominster, in my view, rose above the others in offering a well-defined performance venue, very good restaurant features, and providing the most robust of the floor plan details. Leominster also made a convincing argument that their proposal is a well-balanced three-feature venue, dining, performance, and gaming. Each of those three is highlighted, in which each is a draw in and of itself. Plainville proposes racing and simulcasting in addition to slots, and it highlights its track and the perpetuation of harness racing amenities, and emphasizes its situation as part of a regional nexus of venues: the Gillette Stadium, the TPC course, the mall, and the Comcast Center. Construction cost per square foot was considered as an approximation of the quality of the building, and that is more relevant in a second. Rainham also proposes simulcast in addition to slots. Construction costs per square foot fell 25 to 30% below Leominster and Plainville. And this is only for the final facility. So much of that, some of that construction cost undoubtedly is taken up in the first facility. But we're talking now about the final facility. And it's that observation that I make with respect to that. And Rainham's responses to several questions were less detailed than the responses by the other applicants. There again is the backup for the next slide, in which I assigned to Leominster a very good rating, to Plainville a sufficient to very good rating, and to Leominster an insufficient sufficient rating. The insufficiency stemmed largely from the lack of detail in a number of their responses, and from the existence of the large multifunction room for which there was no highly refined, discernible, targeted business plan. And that was something about the facility and its features that led to that approach. Questions there?
Commissioner, no, never mind, nothing.
Okay, let's take a look at compatibility with surroundings, which is the next criterion then. There are 13 questions here. Again, the first grouping, traffic mitigation, egress from the gaming establishment, adequate of existing transportation infrastructure, and parking facilities, it seemed to me were the most important of those insofar as an overall rating is concerned. These others are important, particularly delivery of supplies and trash removal and signage. They actually, on reflection, might well have been in the higher category, but they're at the top of the next category. And all of these categories were considered in reaching an overall rating, but those are the ones that I want to focus on with you today, and those were the ones on which I placed the most importance. Let's look at the next, and by now very familiar slide. I wanted to say here that there are 900 plus parking spaces in total. There are 1,250 gaming positions, 950 parking spaces. That complies with zoning, complies with a number of industry standards, but that's how many that site will have. It's a compact site. Yeah.
Excuse me, I thought the sort of order of thumb was one per gaming position?
That's a rule of thumb. This complies both with zoning and with some standards.
With other industry standards?
With
Okay.
some standards for the industry, with the idea that not everybody's going to come alone.
Right.
Groups are going to come, and so there is also, well, let me stop there. That's basically how we got to that
Okay.
number, how I got to that number. It's well laid out. Access and egress from the gaming facility and from the parking lot are clear. There has been some effort made with public transportation to get a bus line to come to the site. There is a detailed, as I mentioned before, I think, site improvement plan. There is an aggressive recycling plan, and the signage is modest here.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, is there any accommodation for bus traffic?
Uh,
Not the public transportation, but,
Right. There is no present, there's no place on this where you see accommodation for bus traffic. But the undertaking with the bus companies is not completed. They're making an effort to do that and promise to have some facility in, not in this rendering, not in this drawing, right.
okay.
Commissioner McHugh,
Yeah.
there is a gentleman that would like to say something. I don't know that you want to do that at this time.
Well, let me wait for just a second. We'll come back to that in a second if I could stay. So that is, that's an answer to your question, Commissioner. All right. Stan, did you want to say something now? This is Stan Elkerton.
On the parking, you started at 960 spaces.
Right. Right.
That was the featured alternative that was original.
Right.
The one they're going with is 1,601.
A little louder, please.
He'll repeat, yeah.
1,601 is what that site plan, which is the current alternative shows.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That's exactly right. I misspoke. The original one had 960. This has 1,600 plus. Yeah, thank you very much. So this does have more than the 1,250. The 960 we did examine and found to be sufficient there, but whatever concerns one might have had about that have been allayed by the fact that we now have 1,600. So thank you, Stan. There are two, in the next slide, two issues that Mass Department of Transportation, MassDOT, is concerned about. I think Commissioner Cameron will talk more about these later, but we got a letter from the Department of Transportation last Friday, in which we were informed that they have some concerns about the left-hand turn on this off-ramp from I-90. Cars coming down this off-ramp run into signals. Cars coming off of both of these off-ramps run into signals if they're going in this direction. And there was a concern that the left-hand turns would back up this ramp and interfere with the flow of traffic on I-90 itself. And there also is some concern expressed by the Department of Transportation about this intersection. The permitting and construction necessary to resolve this, in the Department of Transportation's view, could take 9 to 14 months and 12 to 20 months for this one. I have to emphasize that's what they said in the letter. There are concerns about each of the applicants, as we'll see. These numbers are numbers on which I don't think we can rely too heavily, because for each, there are alternatives that can be pursued, and once the final applicant is chosen, working with the department and with that applicant will clarify a lot of what I think is not clear right now.
While you're on this slide,
Yeah.
as I understand it, pre-market crash or everything crash, this area was permitted for and had approved a major shopping mall by Pyramid. Do you happen to, is it precisely the location of the casino, or do you happen to, of the slots parlor, or do you happen to know exactly where that Pyramid development would have gone?
I don't, and I'm not going to hazard a guess. I can certainly find the answer to that
Okay.
and get it for you this afternoon.
Does any of you happen to know offhand?
We took a look at it. I don't think we drilled down to find exactly what the parameters.
Essentially in the same location, north, south.
Farther south on both sides? So in this area,
Right.
Rick Moore says,
Okay.
but let's look further and see if we can find
If you
something more
could
precise.
just, I'd like to be interested to know exactly what the outline of that Pyramid facility was versus the outline of this facility.
All right, we'll look at that and come back. Okay, next slide, please. So this is, again, a familiar slide. There are 1,620 total spaces here and in the parking garage. It's well laid out. Access, egress points are clear. There's a detailed site improvement plan. There's an aggressive recycling plan. There is modest signage that's visible from the street, some signage, but it's modest. There is, if you look carefully on this corner right here, you'll see, I think on this plan, but if not, at least you'll see on another one, a left-hand turn indicator. That I'm going to come back to in a minute. But that's the overall plan there. Let's look at the next slide, and you'll see why I focused on that left-hand turn. This is the so-called jug handle slide again. At present, access to this site from Route 495 southbound requires people to come off Route 495, come down Route 1, go around the jug handle like this, and then come back and go into the facility like that. To come out and go back north, you come out, take a right-hand turn, go up, turn around the cloverleaf, and leave to the north. From the south, you come up, go around, down, and it's essentially the same. To go south, you then go back, go on here, and go south. On Route 1, you need, from the south, you simply come up and you turn in. If you want to go back south, however, you come out and you have to go up, go around the cloverleaf, around that cloverleaf, and then go south again. From the northbound area, you come down, go through the jug handle into the facility, and then come out and go straight north. That's not the most desirable way to approach this facility from the applicant's view, or I think from anybody's view, if there were a better alternative. There is, however, a concrete median down the middle of Route 1 at present. The applicant's proposed improvement is shown in the next slide. and it is to widen the off-ramp from Route I-495, widen this area of Route 1, and provide a signal here that would allow a left-hand turn into the facility. Allow, at the same time, a right-hand turn, widen these lanes for a right-hand turn out of the facility, having in mind two lanes here and the major throughway up here, but also permit a left-hand turn here and down. And that would allow access across Route 1 in both directions. The Mass Department of Transportation has been dubious about this approach from the beginning, I think it's fair to say. And they remain dubious. In their letter of last week, they said that they would pursue that alternative only if the crash rate at this intersection was too high for their standards. And that if they did pursue this, the Federal Highway Administration undoubtedly would have to be involved, and it would take up to 2 years for the permitting to be completed, with another 6 to 9 months for construction. So that was their most recent pronouncement on this. They also expressed some concerns about necessary improvements on the so-called jug handle. The local officials are not happy with the idea of improvements on the jug handle, so that too remains a problem. Precisely how
Local officials meaning in Rainham.
Right.
No,
in
Plainville.
Plainville.
I'm sorry, in Plainville,
Plainville.
yeah, I'm sorry.
So there is at the moment some question about how this is going to be resolved, and perhaps because there's no straightforward path, it's not simply a question of how much time it's going to take. The path is a little uncertain what the best outcome is. So they're in a little bit different position vis-a-vis this issue than the other applicants are. Let's turn now to Rainham. As I said before, the parking spaces here are, according to the application, 2,451. The letter from the Department of Transportation we got on Friday talked about 2,900 spaces, but in any event, there is ample parking in this very large lot here. It's unclear, though, exactly who parks where. There are very large signs on the front of the building. There is no commitment by the Rainham applicant to recycling efforts. There are 3 entrances to the facility along Route 138. There's an entrance right here. This apparently is the main entrance, and this is another entrance on the south side of the facility. It's not clear how the applicant intends those 3 to work. Probably this is a service entrance. This clearly is the main entrance and will involve widening of the road here. It's not clear what the function of this is or how this entrance works or is conceived to work. The next slide, please. The Department of Transportation says that the alterations of the road here to create the entrances, highlight the entrances, and to widen the road, the permitting and construction would take 12 to 18 months in its view. But it also said, I think for the first time on Friday, that there is a intersection about 5 miles north of the facility at 106 and 38, where improvements would be necessary before the Phase 1 facility could open. And that those improvements are already in a pipeline, but that they would not be ready before the fall of 2015. So if one reads literally the MassDOT letter from last Friday, they're suggesting that the Phase 1 facility couldn't open until the fall of 2015. Again, I think that needs more clarification. That's simply the information that we have at the moment. Overall, is shown on the next slide. Leominster and Plainville generally responded to all questions with sufficient detail and documentation. Plainville in particular provided innovative plans for wayfinding and recycling. Both of them, however, fell short on sufficient information within traffic studies and did not include, among other items, an analysis of roads and intersections impacted within a broader geographic area. That's being taken care of, but that was a shortcoming of both applications. Likewise, Rainham fell short on traffic studies. In addition, Rainham provided conflicting information on site entrances and did not justify what appears to be overabundant parking. It gave insufficient responses relative to site improvements. There were no site improvement plans, and recycling, which it did not commit to doing. Overall, in the next slide, the next slide is sort of a summary, and then overall, for this criterion, I gave Leominster a satisfactory, Plainville an insufficient to sufficient, because primarily of the ambiguity in what remedy for the traffic issues is going to be decided upon, when it's going to be decided upon, and then how quickly it can be done, and an insufficient, sufficient to Rainham based on a lack of information, responses to site improvement, and no commitment to recycling. The absence of any site improvement diagrams and no commitment to recycling. Let's jump ahead to the next one now, number 4.
Could we,
I'm sorry.
could I have-
Yeah.
I had a question, Commissioner. You mentioned this in a previous slide. My question is on Plainville. The preferred alternative from Mass DOT, I understand they're the ones further along when it comes to their draft environmental report,
Plainville's the farthest.
farthest along.
Right.
And they've received comments from Mass DOT relative to the preferred alternative being the jug handle
Right,
with improvements.
right.
If Mass DOT believes that's, or let me, have you taken that into account, or is that ambiguity between what Mass DOT proposes is the preferred alternative versus the applicant's preferred alternative, which is that break in the median?
Well, it's both, I think. It appears that the applicant remains committed to the preferred alternative. Now, how
To its preferred alternative.
the preferred alternative is the break
Right.
in the median
median.
in Route 1. That's as we understand it. How long the applicant will stay with that, we don't know at this point.
Yep.
But that looks like what they're remain committed to. There are necessary improvements, according to MassDOT, for the jug handle as well, and there is some pushback from town officials on that as well. Frank, do you want to add anything to that? Frank Tramatazzi is the consultant on the traffic.
Use the mic if you are.
Yeah, and actually, while he gets prepared, I had a specific question on something you mentioned, which was Mass DOT mentioning if the crash rate on that jug handle reaches a certain threshold, they might go along with the break.
Right. That's what they said
on the
in their
median.
letter, and that's what they said in their letter of last Friday.
Right.
Implying that if the crash rate isn't too high, then they wouldn't go.
If you could, illustrate us just on that point, Frank, or anything else.
I'm sorry, what point?
That crash rate, what does that mean in layman's terms?
What Mass DOT is looking to do was to check the crash rate at the jug handle. Some improvements were made. They believe the crash rate has decreased. The local officials from the town, the police chief, fire chief, have expressed concern that there have been numerous accidents there, so they're conflicting with the actual data that Mass DOT has regarding the crash rate at the jug handle. The locals would rather not see more traffic at the jug handle. They'd rather, I assume, then if they don't want to see traffic at the jug handle, they'd rather see the break in the median and the traffic signal on Route 1. Mass DOT prefers just the opposite, that they route the traffic through the jug handle and not make the break in the median with the traffic signal at that location. to answer your question regarding Commissioner McHugh's ratings, there was lots of discussion with the entire team regarding this particular issue, and that's what I believe Commissioner McHugh has shown in his ratings, is that uncertainty that exists.
Frank, before you go away, Frank, there is, I think in the Plainville diagram where you were demonstrating the supposedly cut in the, or break in the barrier on Route 1, it looked like is there also a light proposed for the end of the ramp coming off 495 south that's part of that project? If we could go back a few screens, sorry about it. The end of the ramp over to the right.
Yes, there is a traffic signal at the end of the ramp, and what they're proposing there is to do a widening.
Okay. But is that connected to the left turn? Or the break in the barrier intersection that they want to create? Are those two pieces of it
I'm
connected?
not sure I understand what.
Do you need to have the light at the end of the off-ramp as part of the solution to the break on Route 1?
I believe those are independent,
Okay,
yes.
all right, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, let me move now then to criterion 4, which contains, as I said at the beginning, 22 questions total. Again, I've grouped them into 3 groups. The most important of these fall into 2 categories. First, the lead and stretch, lead certification and stretch energy code. And those are really criteria which define environmental friendliness. I think it's fair to use that shorthand description. The second is a series of criteria next to which there are asterisks. And those criteria are criteria that are taken from the statute. The statute asked us to consider, told us to consider performance on those criteria. So I'd like to spend, this is an area that's not as easily illustrated as the other areas. And so I'd like to spend time talking about those 2 general themes. And I'll begin with the LEED discussion. The LEED is an acronym for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a code, a rating system, if you will, promulgated by the United States Green Building Council. And there are a number of LEED score sheets that are applicable to a variety of different uses. This is the LEED score sheet that is used for large construction or reconstruction and is used across the country for that purpose. This score sheet contains a possible 110 points. That's the most you can get. The points fall into 7 separate categories: sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, indoor environmental quality, innovation and design, and regional priority. Not all have the same number of points attached to them. In other words, the max for sustainable sites is different than the max for energy and atmosphere. In any event, the other notable thing is that regional priority varies by region, as the name suggests, because some things that are useful in Boston may not be useful in Tucson and vice versa. And so there are specific things identified here for this area that aren't part of the national scale. This, the rest of this, though, is uniform across the country. The idea here is to allow builders flexibility in how to achieve a green building. Some may decide to spend a lot of energy and time on sustainable sites and less time on energy and atmosphere. Others may decide to do it this way. The outcome is what's important under this scale, not the way and the path that's taken to the outcome. So that's why this rating system's been created. And these numbers are all self-assigned. This is what the applicants propose to do. We've checked to make certain that we think that the applicant is in the ballpark, that it's capable of doing it, that its plans would enable it to do that. This, it seems to me, is another condition that we ought to include in our award of a license to the licensee, that they actually reach the levels of LEED that they want, that they've said that they will. There are colored standards attached to these. LEED Gold is the standard the statute discusses and sets out as the target. There is beneath LEED Gold, LEED Silver, and then there's LEED Certified as the bottom standard, and there's one standard that's higher, which is LEED Platinum. LEED Gold is the one that that the statute asks the applicants to focus on. You'll notice that with respect to these three qualities, all the applicants do essentially the same. Leominster pulls ahead with energy and atmosphere, primarily because of a very efficient central heating, cooling, and chilling plant that they propose to install in this facility. Plainville pulls ahead on sustainable sites, largely because of that highly developed and highly refined water recycling facility that I mentioned to you a minute ago. The next slide gives us their relative...
Excuse me, Commissioner, do we assign these number values, or do they assign it and then we vetted it?
The latter, Mr. Chairman. They assigned
Okay.
it, we vetted it, we checked
Okay.
a variety of things to see if they were really capable of doing that, and came to the conclusion that the numbers you're looking at here were something they were capable of
They
doing.
were legit. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
This is a relative comparison. Both Leominster and Plainville reached the gold standard. They were pretty close together. Raynham, however, committed only to the LEED silver standard. It aspirationally said that it would strive for gold, but in its point tally gave us, and in narrative accompanying that, said it would reach LEED silver, not LEED gold. That's the LEED component. Now, the starred components. This slide may need a little explanation.
You think?
This is an effort. This is an effort to compare unlike criteria, and I think it's been highly successful. We'll see. We'll see. The point of this is we have 9 criteria that the statute asks us to look at. The criteria are all difficult to compare on an apples-to-apples basis. We have LEED certification. We have the stretch energy code. We have on-site energy generation. We have off-site renewable energy and the like. We could have showed you in a series of 9 tables how each proposed to do it. But this is designed to help us understand the strength of their overall approach to the 9 criteria. It's called the spider chart. It's something you can tuck away and use elsewhere if you choose.
I think an architect came up with that one.
Pardon me?
Which is very useful. I think an architect came up with something like that, which is very useful.
Exactly so. Ray Porfilio came up with that, yeah. And it's very
It's
useful.
visually
You'll
useful.
agree. So what this does, it actually is very useful. I thought it was fun, too. What you actually, what we've done here is this. We took we made a circle, took 4 concentric circles evenly spaced from top to bottom. The top circle, the outermost circle is outstanding. The next circle is very good. The next is sufficient, and the next is insufficient. Those are the circles. They're equally spaced around. Then we took each of the 9 criteria, combined 2 of them, and created 8 intersecting lines that meet at the point in the middle. Again, equally spaced around the circles. We then looked at and rated each of those 9. And where the ratings intersected with the circle, we placed a dot. So for example, over here, on-site energy generation, This is the Rainham one. On-site energy generation, we rated that as satisfactory. Their approach to that is satisfactory. We put a dot. When we got to on-site renewable energy, we rated that as satisfactory. We put a dot, and so on around. Then we connected the dots and filled in the center. And the strength of the overall approach to those 9 criteria is revealed by the area that's covered when we connect the dots. That's the theory of this. So the larger the area encompassed by the connected dots, the greater the overall strength of their approach to these 9 criteria. So you can see here approximations. The next slide compresses those and shows you the areas piled on top of each other and shows the overall strength of the 3 applicants' approach. Because this covers the greater area, the green, the Plainville, their overall approach was the strongest. The next strongest was the Leominster approach. The area covered by their chart was next in total. And this one has, because of a blending of colors, changed slightly, covered less area, so was less strong an approach to those 9 criteria.
Could I ask a couple, questions about this? Fascinating, really interesting. The one that is excellent or outstanding.
Right.
Oh, okay, stormwater. So that is Plainville's recycling system. Okay.
That was the only outstanding that that I awarded in this in the review. So
Right.
I may be a hard marker, but
Right.
but that's the only
Okay.
outstanding that was awarded.
And then in the, but LEED certification, both Leominster and Plainville were virtually the same. They
Yeah.
were both gold.
Yeah.
They were, 64, 66.
Yeah.
Why?
I think you're right, Mr. Chairman. I think this was a judgment call, and I think that could just as easily have been bumped up there.
Okay.
And that would mean that the area comes down here and comes down here. So the
Right.
area would be slightly big. But I think that's a fair comment, and I frankly noticed that myself this morning when I was doing the final preparations.
Okay.
But it doesn't change the results, it does change the magnitude.
And what is, I can't quite read, what is the very good for Rainham down below?
The very good for Rainham is energy efficient equipment. They have the highly efficient system. Okay? All right.
Energy efficient equipment, huh?
The movement of this up there is still fair in response to your question, but Ray reminds me that in addition to the scoring, we consider the backup for the scoring and the implementation plan. And as I mentioned to you before, the Plainville implementation for that roof solar array was far and away better than any other approach to the on-site power generation and the like. And the overall approach to the LEED implementation was more detailed and more fine-grained than the others. So although the scores were the same, that's the reason we put the difference between the two. They could have been merged without a loss of area. Without a loss without an outcome determinative change.
Right.
Right? Any other questions? Okay. So Leominster, in my narrative, commits to the LEED gold standard in the stretch energy code. Its central heating plant system with absorption cooling makes the design energy efficient and less reliant on the grid for its power. Limited on-site renewables are proposed. Leominster has good stormwater management and conserves potable and irrigation water uses. Plainville commits to the LEED gold target in the stretch energy code, supported by a detailed implementation plan. And that's the point I was just making a second ago. Its mechanical system is comprised of distributed rooftop units balanced by an efficient envelope and significant on-site renewables supported by a solar analysis. The stormwater plan utilizes the track infill for full on-site retention and exceeds best practices. Raynham's proposal commits to LEED Silver instead of the targeted gold, but will meet the stretch energy code. Raynham proposes a centralized mechanical system, but provides us with no detail. Mention is made of a significant ground-based solar array, but it's not located on the plans. The site approach acknowledges the proximity of water resources and mitigates discharge, but maintains significantly more impervious surface than the other proposals. As a consequence of that, the next slide is the backup, and then the third slide is the result, which is sufficient to very good for Leominster, very good for Plainville, and insufficient for Raynham. And that's largely because of a lack of commitment to meet the LEED gold, which is a standard that, as I said, is really a proxy for all environmental or measure of environmental awareness. Now, the next, we have three left, 5, 6, and 7.
Commissioner,
And-
excuse me,
Yeah,
before you
sure.
do that, could we take a quick break? It's been a couple hours. We'll just take a very quick 5-minute break.
Okay, sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are reconvening meeting 110. By the way, this meeting will last all week. We will just temporarily adjourn each day, and this will be a continuation of this meeting all day, all week. Commissioner McHugh, you're back on stage.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The next three categories, and there are three left, I'm going to deal with very quickly. And in sort of summary fashion. That's not to say that they're not important considerations. It is to say that they are considerations that each applicant performed equally well on. They're relatively defined in narrow categories, and for that reason, I'm going to deal with them relatively quickly. Let's turn with that thought to criterion 5, which talks about security, monitoring, surveillance, and emergency procedures. Much of the information regarding equipment and procedures provided in this section by all the applicants, all their information, appears to conform to industry standards, and much of the information provided by Leominster was taken directly from its existing Maryland Live facility. This level of detail allowed for a more in-depth understanding of the overall security operation proposed for Leominster. Similar detail was lacking in some of the responses for the Raynham and Plainville applications, but it's anticipated that the selected licensee will provide more information on emergency procedures and meet all of the safety requirements. A lot of that is covered by code requirements. A lot of that is under our control. A lot of that is detail that we can deal with and insist on as we proceed. So for that reason, and given the detail that they did give us, I rated each of them as satisfactory. Criterion 6, the next criterion, deals with permitting, where they are in their permitting, their approach to permitting, and again, each applicant provided a summary of the required permits and associated documentation. Leominster completed an ENF under the MIPA and Raynham process, and Raynham completed an ENF and a draft EIR. They need to complete the MIPA process and obtain local permits. Both have routine permitting issues, but should be able to meet their anticipated schedule. Leominster's schedule relies on an early construction start before MIPA is completed. The temporary slot parlor provided in Raynham may be delayed due to permits. We already talked about one possible DOT impediment to that. and Plainville has completed the MEPA process and has obtained most local permits. The only non-routine permitting issue is obtaining MassDOT and possibly Federal Highway Administration approval for a break in access on Route 1, or if unsuccessful, dealing successfully with the jug handle. So for that reason, because there was no real distinguishing factors for any of them, and they all were in sufficient shape, I gave them each a sufficient rating. And finally, they all submitted site plans. They all talked about, to some extent, other uses of the facility, and they each were sufficient with respect to that. So that completes my analysis of the 7 separate criteria. The next slide is simply the individual narratives that I've read as we've proceeded, that were the summary narratives for each of the applicants in each of the criteria, and the color coding depicting the ratings that I assigned to them. Out of that, I created an overall rating for each of the applicants. And the narrative, with an accompanying narrative, and with the assistance, as I had throughout, of the experts on whose advice I relied to a significant degree. So let me begin with the overall narrative rating for Leominster. Leominster offers a well-documented overall design emphasizing an upscale entertainment venue with 3 features: gaming, dining, and live entertainment, each of which is a draw in and of itself. The dining is directly accessible from the building exterior. The applicant has demonstrated that it is focused on an excellent customer experience in all of its offerings, supported by our observation of Maryland Live. Overall, the application is satisfactory to very good. It excels with its approach to a balanced entertainment venue. It meets all requirements for utility connections and improvements, stormwater management, green energy, and the LEED Gold target. It proposes a centralized heating and cooling plant with a cogeneration facility of 1.5 megawatt generating capacity. That's a significant generation capacity, reflecting long-term investment, improved energy performance, and protection from grid failure. Parking and landscaping plans were well-developed and thoughtful. Only 3 of the 79 questions were rated insufficient, and 2 of these were in common with the other 2 applicants. The third, question 4-39, integration with surrounding venues, is somewhat of a misfit for this site because it's relatively isolated from existing development. The concern does exist that the applicant's schedule to open the facility by the end of 2014 is overly optimistic, and that coordination of permitting and construction could delay the opening for 3 to 6 months. Insofar as Plainville is concerned, the applicant provides an integrated design approach marrying the existing harness racing venue and simulcast facility with the slots parlor in a well-developed concept. The application highlights the continuation of harness racing as a feature of the site, thereby connecting with the local economy and horse racing industry, i.e. the horse farms in Massachusetts. Overall, the application is satisfactory to very good. In addition to supporting the harness racing, it offers other non-competing amenities, including meeting and conference space, and on a small scale, a performance venue. Its site plan benefits from integrated parking in a garage for customer convenience and a visually attractive track and open space. It makes a strong presentation on connections with regional attractions, including Gillette Stadium, Comcast Center, the Rentham Outlets, and TPC Boston Championship Golf Course. It meets all requirements for utility connections and improvements, stormwater management, green energy, parking, landscaping, and the LEED Gold target. It credibly demonstrates the ability to recycle all stormwater and rainwater fully and effectively. It also added credibility to its LEED scorecard with a LEED Gold action plan. That's the action plan I mentioned in response when we talked just a few minutes ago. Plainville proposes as part of its traffic plan to make a cut through the Route 1 median barrier to to improve access to the site from 495. There's a risk that this plan will not be permitted by MassDOT or the Federal Highway Administration, which, if not resolved as soon as proposed, or in some alternative plan, could delay opening of the project. And although the applicant proposes an early opening with 500 slot machines, it is not clear if this would be allowable or desirable ahead of the traffic improvements. And finally, Rainham presents a phased approach, including a temporary early opening gaming facility with ample room for future slot and commercial development, possibly supported by a South Coast Rail project. But as we mentioned, that would be phase 4, and there's no commitment to that. It incorporates gaming, simulcast, and a multi-purpose space into an internally focused facility set in a large parking area. However, when compared to the other submissions, the application is less developed in its design and in its documentation. Its Phase 2 proposal is essentially a large box, and many of the non-gaming amenities are not well defined as the other applicant submittals. The exterior is dominated by electric signage. Its landscape proposal lacks detail. The parking field size is unjustified and detracts from the overall look of the site. Further, the applicant only commits to LEED Silver, in conflict with the LEED Gold target established by the legislature. Based on our observations at the Parks Bensalem in Pennsylvania, Parks is clearly capable of building and operating a successful, indeed a highly successful slot machine parlor. Of the 3 applicants, this is rated lowest in Category 4 because it lacked detail, overlooked some requirements, and missed opportunities to present the project in its best light. So finally, that is the summation of the analysis that we provided. The colors are supplied, and that concludes, and that represents the overall rating that I assigned to the applicants with respect to Category 4. I'd be happy to take any further questions that any of you have.
I have a question that may be more of a procedural for us relative to when we address these sort of discussions. We talked about, from an agenda setting point, that the deliberations would occur perhaps on Thursday, as early as Thursday. But as we will see, this is also a commercial for this afternoon, we will see in the finance section and the market assessment pre-competition, parking, overabundance of parking is really a positive because these facilities are projected to have a lot of customers at different times, et cetera. Post-competition, when the Category 1s come in line, it might be a different story. But again, I'm gonna get through that. I did want to raise that as a comment right off the bat, because some of these positives here, which are obviously very well thought of and arrived at, have an implication in other sections, namely,
I think that's really a fundamentally important point, because the perspective of this analysis was from the building and site design. It's a physical, aesthetic, green, energy focused analysis. It doesn't focus on economics. And it is perfectly clear, and this is the part of the conversation I really look forward to. It's perfectly clear that something that is the most aesthetically pleasing can be the least commercially desirable in terms of monetary yield and vice versa. And so, from my standpoint at least, I think that's part of the conversation that we need to have. And this is not by any means the end of the line for anybody. I think that's really important. And the most exciting part of this, I think, the most interesting part of this.
Yeah, I'd like to, that's a very good point, and I was thinking as you were talking about how aesthetically pleasing, for example, restaurants are that you can enter from the outside, go to the inside. That is problematic for security at some time, so it just takes extra energy on the security end of things. Likewise, I'll be looking at traffic with a different lens, the mitigation lens. So there may be some differences in how we approach the same data. So that is a very good point.
Okay.
All right.
We'll see that.
I think it was a great job, and thank you for getting us off to this start. I had, well, on Commissioner Zuniga's point about the parking, as long as we're on that, and I don't know whether you have the knowledge in-house or not, but the standard that a facility needs X spots, and it turns out to be one, I guess, 1 plus, the others pretty much have 1,600, 1 plus for each gaming facility, I would assume would be designed to accommodate maximum utilization. So the fact that there might be really maximum utilization over the course of the first 2 or 3 years pre-competition, I'm not sure that would mean that you would need an extra 1,300 parking spaces. So I guess my question, but it's an interesting point, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's designed to accommodate sort of your average rather than your max. But I just wondered whether anybody had the knowledge to, during that early period when we expect these facilities, particularly on Friday and Saturday nights, to be really maxed out pre-competition, is there any reason to think that a substantially larger number of parking spaces would actually be a plus and be required?
Does anyone, Frank, you want to take a crack at that?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll give you an analogy. If you remember when IKEA opened up in Avon, obviously the traffic analysis and what was proposed and what was assumed to be once it was built compared to when it first opened was different. It was the novelty in which the greater number of crowds were attracted to something that's new in the area. I would assume that the same result will occur with the first slots parlor in Massachusetts, where initially, until the novelty wears off, you will have an excess number of people attending or going to the gaming facility, probably more than there are enough gaming positions to accommodate. So the simple answer is yes. Initially, the more parking, the better, because you'll be able to accommodate them. But then that will level off once, as I describe it, the novelty would wear off.
Okay, interesting.
And it's also important to understand rules of thumb in a larger context. The one-to-one, looks at averages and many other jurisdictions. It also depends what happens besides the 1,250 slots machines there. For example, entertainment and restaurants. The seats. There's another ratio that we'll get into later relative to food and beverage seats to slot machines. But if parking is at capacity, a customer may just decide never to come into the facility. Whereas if I'm able to park and the casino is really full, I might go take, some food and beverage or something like that. But anyway, the point has been made, and I'll talk in more detail
Yeah.
about that later.
So this is the balance of,
Yep.
the balance that we need to talk
Right.
about.
I had one other question. Of your first 4 categories were, by your description, the ones that were most important. Of those 3, the Leominster site was rated the highest. Of those 4, the Leominster site was rated the highest in 3 of the 4. When you net everything out, you rate Plainville and Leominster, on the purposes of the chart, the same,
Right.
sufficient to very good.
Right.
Do you judge them to be the same?
Yes.
So the fact that one was rated higher in 3 and one was rated higher in 1 Does that net to anything?
Yeah, that's an important question. Thank you for asking that. There's no linear way to migrate from the rankings for the 7 criteria to the overall ranking. Some were rated higher in the very goods were more very good than the others, but not outstanding. And so we took a look at everything we'd done. I took a look at everything we'd done, talked with the advisors about everything we'd done, and the advice they'd given throughout the process. And then looked at the strength of the various components of the criteria ratings, and in that fashion, developed this. So it is not assigning certain points for winning in a particular category or for getting such a score in a particular category, and then adding up the points. It is a more subjective progress from one to the other. But overall, my judgment was, and is, albeit for different reasons, that the two present from a building and site design standpoint proposals that are both very good to sufficient to very good.
At a similar level?
Right.
Okay. Other?
Just two quick questions, and certainly there's as I think we'll see in the next day and a half, 2 days, that there is some overlap between questions between categories. One of the HR policy questions that falls in my category is on-site childcare. And I think it's
Was on
just
childcare, right.
which is important to point out as you went meticulously through each of the, tearing the roof off and looking underneath, that there's no on-site childcare, which obviously leads to answers for my round of questions. The other point is, just picking up on the parking discussion, is there a feeling that there's sufficient on-site parking for employees as well? I didn't see necessarily designated areas for employee parking, but do you have an idea of how the applicants have sought to address where their employees are going to park?
I think the applicants are going to park some employees on site. I think that's part of the plan. Overflow parking for the Leominster applicant, I think, has been arranged with the Walmart that's up the road. There is plenty of room for employee parking at Raynham. So they've addressed it in different ways, but you're correct. The site plan doesn't show where for the Leominster facility, which has everything color-coded, does not show the place for employee parking.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Great.
Okay.
Excellent
you.
job.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner. Thank you. I have one process note that we want to mention. If any applicant should hear during one of these presentations or during the discussion anything that they believe to be a mistake of fact, Commissioner McHugh initially said one number of parking spaces and then realized that it was a larger number. It's inevitable, as we're all standing up here talking for 2 days, that there may be an inadvertent mistake of fact. So if any applicant hears of what they believe to be a mistake of fact in our presentations, please get that word to Ombudsman Ziemba ASAP, and we will factor that feedback into our ongoing discussions and deliberations. With that, we will take a temporary adjournment at noon. We, for reasons you all know, won't be bringing our lunch in today, so we will take an hour-and-a-half break, and we will reconvene at 1:30 for our finance presentation.